When I was a kid, I wanted a new bike, a Nintendo, and an authentic John Elway jersey, preferably autographed. Now that I'm, theoretically, all grown up, my wish list includes an even fancier bike, a Steam Deck, universal public health care, and student loans that won't outlive me. Whether you're 5 or 85, you probably have a pretty extensive wish list. That's because without unlimited income, time, and resources, actually having all the things you want is as impossible as getting my students to actually do the reading before class. Which means you're gonna have to make some sacrifices. Even though we're used to prioritizing each and every day about how to spend our time or money, it can still feel a little tricky. And a lot goes into our decision-making process. Learning how and why people, businesses, and governments make big choices is a huge part of understanding society as a whole. But even when it gets complicated, one thing remains constant. There will always be less resources than there are ways to spend them. Hi, I'm Matt Sofa, and this is Study Hall, Macroeconomics. Economics studies how individuals, institutions, and societies make choices about allocating those limited resources to satisfy unlimited wants. It's often called a social science because it evaluates human behavior through a scientific lens. Microeconomics usually focuses on individuals, individual people, households, and companies. How are you spending your paycheck, Carol? How about you, Kenjiro? How about you, faceless oil corporation? Microeconomics is a really important part of understanding why we make the choices we do at the individual level. Macroeconomics is pretty much the same thing, but on an even bigger, dare I say, macro scale? We're talking a whole country or even the whole world. And understanding the inner workings of economics can explain a lot about both human behavior and the way we structured our world. But no matter the scope, much of economics is concerned with the same basic problem: scarcity, or the issue of meeting unlimited wants with limited resources. So when talking about econ, scarcity is a pretty good place to start. Now, while scarcity is universal, it's not like every human being in every country starts with the same starter pack of belongings and abilities. Instead, everyone is born into circumstances with different accesses to wealth, natural resources, education, or societal power. And there are different ways of addressing scarcity on a macro level as well. For instance, a government that prioritizes economic competition might leave regulation up to the markets themselves, while those which prioritize equal access might use governmental controls to distribute resources according to perceived need. In this course, we'll be exploring the first approach, known as the market economy, where market forces like supply, demand, and competition between businesses control prices, production, and consumption. In the free market's most famous iteration, the means of production are privately owned instead of being managed by the government. We call that system capitalism. But no matter the economic system, we can't escape the scarcity dilemma. And governments are no different. A boost to one area of a national budget usually means a cut somewhere else. Like boosting the military budget might mean cutting crucial social programs like free school lunches. That right there is an example of a trade-off, or giving up one thing to pursue another. And unfortunately, they're an unavoidable part of the scarcity lifestyle. Trade-offs exist on both a micro and a macro level. And assessing the costs and the benefits of decisions is the foundation of all economic analysis, big or small. For me personally, making a trade-off looks like grading papers into the wee hours of the night so I can afford to take a long Sunday run. I came to my decision based off my gut feeling. I knew I would be more disappointed to miss out on my weekly miles than I would be to skip out on a Friday night couch potato sesh. But economists are less about the vibe and more about the numbers. So they go even further and look at all choices, big and small, by evaluating the value of the next best thing given up when you make a decision, known as the opportunity cost. Let's zoom in on a micro example. Say Lindsay is a hardworking college student who has a test next week on top of her job at the local steakhouse. When her boss offers her an extra shift, the coveted Friday night, guaranteed to roll in some fat tips, she has to decide whether to take the extra work or use that time to get some review in for her Monday morning test on Shakespeare, Webster, and Marlowe. To study or not to study? That is the question. The opportunity cost for staying in to review for the test would be all the money Lindsay could have made, while the opportunity cost for taking the shift would be all the studying she could have gotten done, and all of the knowledge about those old dead poet guys. To help with decision making, we can also break things down even more into explicit and implicit costs. Explicit costs are the money extended in a choice. For Lindsay, this might be the gas money to drive to the restaurant, or the money she would spend ordering in on her study night instead of getting a free side of mashed potatoes at work. Implicit costs, on the other hand, are a little harder to quantify. They're the costs related to the allocation of Lindsay's other resources, like time that she might otherwise spend studying. So the implicit costs of this choice might be the A she could get on her next exam. Both implicit and explicit costs are factored into opportunity cost. Now, Lindsay's an English major, not an economist, so she doesn't break down her Friday night choice quite so thoroughly, at least not consciously. But when she does ultimately decide to skip the shift to study, she made a trade-off based on the belief that this particular night of studying contributes more to her long-term success than it costs her in terms of the money she'd be giving up. Making and understanding trade-offs is a huge part of economics. But these decisions can be much more far-reaching than just what to do with your Friday night. And while a small-scale understanding of scarcity and opportunity costs may seem simple, it's really helpful when we take a step back and think about the world as a whole, or in aggregate. Rather than examining choices around Lindsay's individual time and pocket cash, macroeconomics studies broad measures of decision-making about large-scale production, consumption, and exchange, more generally known as the economy. To envision it, you can think about the economy as a human body. Individual people and companies or firms are like the many cells of the body, each with their own role to play, but part of a much bigger whole. At the cellular level, there are goods being produced, people using those goods, and individual instances of exchange. Money flows through the economy like blood flows around the body, bringing more resources to some parts of the economy and routing them away from others. And central banks are a bit like the heart. They make policies that change how much and how frequently money flows into the economy. Measuring the health of the economy is like going to the doctor's office for a checkup. Economists measure rates of things like production, consumption, and inflation, like a doctor might listen to your heart or test your reflexes. And policies like raising interest rates are the economic equivalent of medicine, sending positive changes to get things back on track. Finally, the IRS, or Internal Revenue Service, is like your stomach because, all right, I'm out. This is an econ class, not biology, okay? In the end, part of why we talk about the economy as a whole is not because we're anatomy experts with a firm grasp on the inner workings of our circulatory system. It's because, just like in the human body, every economic sector has a role to play that impacts the other part of the system. Thinking of the economy as a living organism constantly in flux can help us see why each little piece is important, and why it's crucial to look a little deeper at how everything in our economic system is connected. As you might be figuring out by now, the economy is big and very complicated. To make things a little easier, economists look at patterns in individual parts of the economy to get a feel for what's going on and what might be coming next. It's like going to the doctor when they take your blood pressure with that very stylish little sleeve. One reading can be helpful, but it's even better when the doctor compares it to your past tests to check for any big, sudden changes. Same thing with the economy. Economists look at measures like gross domestic product, inflation, and unemployment rate over time to pick up any abnormalities and can help diagnose what kind of intervention from the government might be needed to get things back on track. But an understanding of macroeconomics isn't only about solving what's wrong with the economy right now. It also helps predict what might happen in the future. When macroeconomists look at these kind of measurements over months and years, they start to see patterns and trends that can help institutions like governments make decisions about how to spend tax dollars and what laws and policies to make. Because we know in this world of scarcity, even governments can't have it all. And every economic decision is gonna be a trade-off. Like, choosing to cut taxes might help the economy in some ways, but it means having to figure out a way to spend less or go more into debt, both of which have cascading consequences for the country as a whole. Rather than going by gut feelings, politicians can work with economists to evaluate opportunity costs and past patterns to make what they consider to be the best decision possible. But while we can sometimes predict the effects of government choices based on past economic patterns and models, there are always new factors to consider, and reality doesn't always play by the same rules as theory. All this means that even macroeconomists can be surprised by the broader impact of a choice. When this happens, economists have to evaluate this new information to see if they can figure out why the economy behaved differently than expected and help make even more informed decisions the next time. By understanding the basic concepts of scarcity and opportunity cost, we form a foundation to understand the central questions of economics. Economists and policymakers are still trying to improve our economic systems in the face of scarcity, and they haven't yet landed on a perfect solution. But even if you're not voting on the House floor on whether to allocate another $500 billion to the military, and I assume you're not, although I'm sure a few of those folks could use an economic refresher. Understanding the way scarcity drives all economic decisions is huge. A foundation in macroeconomics can help you to not only make informed decisions in your own life, but understand both the news and the world around you. If you're enjoying this series and are interested in taking the full Study Hall Macroeconomics course and earning college credit from ASU, check out gostudyhall.com, click on the button to learn more. Oh, and if you want to help us out, give this video a like, comment, and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you next time.